Hello everyone, welcome to another weekly update. Here in the UK, it's been well, weather-wise, it's been a lovely week. It's really warmed up. Everything outside is springing to life, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It means I have to spend my time um, cutting things back and stopping things from growing everywhere. But there's been time to kind of get some things out as well. There's been some good things happening. So. Last week, one of the things I talked about was around enabling the bot framework on Skype for Business. So if you don't know, there is a new bot framework channel for Skype for Business. Pretty exciting. Allows you to use bot framework code and have it show up in Skype for Business. And that was great. And I did a blog post about it last week and spoke about it a bit last week. And when I spoke about it last week, there was something I couldn't make work properly, and that was around the authentication. So I couldn't make the Skype for Business channel talk to bot framework unless I removed some of the authentication stuff. And I said at the time, like, this isn't ideal. This is kind of testing. I wouldn't do that kind of thing in production because really what you're doing is opening up your bot to be accessed by any service. There's zero authentication gone into this at all. Anyway, throughout this week, somebody from the Microsoft, so from the Skype for Business product team, reached out because I raised a bug on GitHub about it as well, and said, like, we should just look through this, work through this problem together. By the way, did you update to the latest version of the bot builder DLL, or the latest version of the packages? And no, I hadn't. And so I did that, and suddenly it fixed all my problems. So interestingly, so I've done a blog post about this this week, and it's kind of subtitled "How I Followed the Instructions and It Worked," because one of the things that happened when I was recording the video for last week, or sorry, doing the blog post for last week, is when I went to the bot framework, it had like a red banner across the top saying, like, you need to update your bot builder code to the latest version. You should do that. Do it before the end of July. Blah blah blah. And like everyone else, I guess, I kind of read it and thought, yep, I'll do that someday, but not today. I'll ignore it for now. It doesn't really matter. It'll be fine. July's a long way away. Anyway, what I didn't realize was that was really important, that update, if you wanted to use the Skype for Business channel. And turns out that it's a requirement, in fact. So if you're having problems with the Skype for Business channel and they're the same problems that I was having, make sure that you are definitely on the latest version of the bot builder stuff. I've got instructions for how to do that in the blog. You update your NuGet package. There's like instructions, and there's like a little GIF as well that goes through the main parts of the process. But huge thanks to G at the Skype for Business product team for reaching out, and basically he was very, very polite, but kind of pointed out that I should have probably read the instructions. So fair play. There's some other good stuff in there as well, so check out the blog post. It's good. What else? So part 2 of my standout in search sort of set of 3 blog posts around using a bot framework bot to have it show up in search results on Bing. And that's going to be really interesting. So I'm kind of stringing these out a little bit. I didn't put this in the blog post, but between you and me, I'm kind of stringing these out a little bit because my bot framework bot is still in review, and I'd really like it to get approved before I put out the part 3, because I want to take some screenshots and show it being used, and I can't do that whilst it's still in review. So I'm kind of giving the bot framework guys a bit of time to kind of get it through review. So hopefully another week, and I'll be able to finish off part 3 and publish it next week. Okay, so those were my blog posts that I put out this week. There was some other interesting stuff that happened as well. So this is interesting. So Microsoft Teams has got lots of different ways that developers can enhance it. So you've got things like tabs, you've got connectors, you've got bots, and you've got these other integrations, adaptive cards. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this stuff. And sometimes a solution consists of just one of those things, but sometimes it's a couple of different things all kind of tied together. So you might have a bot that talks to you, but then it presents information via a tab or a connector, whatever. So you have 2 or 3 of these different parts that overall make up an entire kind of offering. What Microsoft have done have allowed you to package those up into what they're calling an app. So a Microsoft Teams app. So an app is really just, like I say, a collection of one or more of these sort of constituent parts. But interestingly, you can package up your app and you can publish it in the Microsoft Store, so other people can get hold of it and run it in their tenant, or crucially give you money for it as well. So if you're a bot framework developer, this is probably pretty exciting. Sorry, I'm mixing and matching my words. Sorry. If you're a Microsoft Teams developer, this is exciting. If you're a bot framework developer, it's probably also exciting because you can take some of the stuff you have, package it up for Teams, and put it in the Office store. So there's I'm going to link to a blog post article. Well, it's an MSDN article, which is the overview of the Teams developer platform, and that's been updated in the past couple of days to talk all about apps and how you can then take all the separate things you have and package them up as apps. And there's good there's good links jumping off from there into all these different places, as you can dig and dive deeper into apps themselves, or you can dive deeper into the different things like connectors or tabs or bots, whatever else it is. So that's pretty exciting. I think it's going to be interesting to see and exciting to see. I think people make apps specifically for Teams, targeted at Teams. Yes, that's exciting. The other thing that's going to be happening, the other thing alongside apps is that the Teams client is going to evolve to show off some of those apps. So they're going to pick out featured apps. It's not totally out, and so I think they're still it's not hitting clients yet, so they're still working out exactly how that looks. But I would guess you probably can also search for apps and stuff in there as well as just showing the featured ones. So that's going to be interesting to see. And that kind of ties into the next thing I want to talk about, actually, which it's not specific to development, but if you're a developer, you will care about this. This is generally good news for sort of developers, and it more affects IT pros and people that have to look after kind of largish deployments of users. And that is the Office 365 Centralized Deployment Service, which sounds very grand, but what it is, it's an interface to allow administrators to automatically roll out add-ins, Office add-ins, to users in their company, to organize it to groups of people, specific users, whatever else it is, in a kind of automated way that doesn't require users to go and search and find whatever app it is they're looking for and install it. Kind of handles all that process for them. So very much like in the old days where you'd have an on-site administrator who would package up your Office add-ins and slipstream them in as an MSI. This is the new way of doing that, but through Office 365. So it's good to see that this exists now. It's an important part of the IT Pro puzzle. It's an important part of supporting, large enterprise deployments on Office 365. But it's generally good news for developers as well, I think, because it will only drive usage of these add-ons. So I'm excited about that, but I'm kind of more excited indirectly for how it's going to drive up add-in usage. And then lastly, I just want to kind of call out 2 things which I think are really interesting and positive, and kind of talk to new Microsoft, and how things have changed. I've talked before about the Microsoft Graph Explorer. So Microsoft Graph is the kind of big overarching API that sits across kind of Office. It's kind of one API to rule them all. You authenticate to there, and then you can kind of access a bunch of stuff across all these different parts of Office 365. Anyway, Graph Explorer is it's kind of a nice interface for developers to go exploring all the different things the API can do, to see what the calls look like, because they're predominantly REST-based calls, but to see what they look like, to kind of get some experience running them, to see the list of parameters and what they do. It's a bit like a kind of very interactive help, if you like, that you can also just run straight from there. It's phenomenally useful. Anyway, big news today, yesterday I think it was, they're open sourcing it. They're just sticking it all out on GitHub, and releasing it under MIT license. And I think that's really good. I think that's to be applauded. Microsoft were never going to make any money out of the Graph Explorer. It's clearly a tool built to drive usage of the Graph API, and I get that. They didn't have to open source it. There's a bunch of effort and money and time goes into a company like Microsoft committing to open source a project. All that kind of legal schmeagle stuff they have to go through, all the liability stuff they have to get signed off. They're choosing to do that and choosing to go through that pain just so that they can get this code in the hands of developers. And I don't think it's going to be super useful for developers particularly. Like I don't see people branching this and making money off it or anything like that. But it's a really useful tool, for learning and for understanding how this stuff works. And if you're using the Graph Explorer and you hit a problem, well, now you go and sort it out yourself. And that's brilliant. So big news. Congratulate, props to Microsoft for this. I think it's really good. And on a very similar theme, but I know much less about this, Microsoft are also yesterday releasing open source toolkits. So they've created a toolkit for deep learning, so deep machine learning. Now this is really interesting because this is really hot stuff at the moment. I've talked about this before. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook to a certain extent, Apple to a certain extent, are really trying to get their heads around this machine learning, this AI, understanding how we take all the data that we have and start to make it work for us and start to make it do really useful things. And Microsoft have created this toolkit, artificial intelligence toolkit. It's called the Microsoft Cognitive Toolkit, and it's been around a little while. This is version 2.0, and it's completely open sourced. They're kind of completely open sourcing it, and that's really interesting. So anybody can go and use this now. Anybody can take it and they can build solutions on it. They can build products on it. There's a nice blog post article about it. It shows something that happened using the beta code, the beta release of it, to do things like, let me find this. So there is a conservancy organization in the US, in Maryland, they're training a neural network that accelerates the creation of 1 meter resolution land covered data sets. Okay, so they're kind of mapping aerial photos in order to work out which bits are which and track it over time. So yeah, I think this is really interesting. So there's other examples as well. There's something happening in China around accurately detecting the onset of diabetic retinopathy. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is clearly why I didn't go into medicine. It's a complication of diabetes that can lead to blindness without proper treatment. So excellent to see that already this stuff is being used for real problems, solving real problems and making a real difference in the world. Open sourcing and putting that toolkit out there for free will hugely accelerate that. And again, massive round of applause to Microsoft for this. Nobody else is doing this. I think it's really interesting. I don't think enough people know about it. I don't think enough people talk about it. But I think it's a really big deal. So if you're on the Microsoft stack and you're seeing other people talking about all the stuff that Facebook are doing and Google are doing for AI and machine learning and all that kind of stuff, you just kind of smile to yourself actually Microsoft are doing a ton of work. And not only that, they're making real differences to real people already, and they're doing it in a nice, friendly, open source, cooperative, collaborative way. And yes, it's probably underreported, but it's there. And if you're on the Microsoft bandwagon, then this is your company, these are your guys, you can feel good about yourself. So let's end the week on a high. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week.